Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, folks. This is Mike Taigman. I am the improvement guide for First Watch, and I will be your facilitator for today's journey through Resilient First. So today's topic was really inspired by all the headlines that we see frequently. I'm sure you see them too on social media and in the regular news about the disproportionate number of folks in emergency services who take their own lives via suicide. And there's been a handful of studies that have been done. Pretty much every one of them shows that folks in the fire service, law enforcement, EMS, and physicians, and actually 2 weeks ago, the study came out about veterinarians, have a suicide rate that is well more than double, sometimes as much as 6 or 7 times higher than that of the base population. Same thing with PTSD, which is frequently connected with suicide. People who work in our services are at much higher risk for PTSD and post-traumatic stress injury. They have higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety, and all of those kinds of things. And those of you that are familiar with First Watch as an organization know that we historically have done real-time data analytics, performance improvement support, help you identify opioids coming into your community, help you with your response time, performance improvements, help you with your clinical quality improvement, those kinds of things. So you're thinking, why is First Watch involved in this space? And so the real beginning of it comes from a number of customers who have asked us to build triggers, which is kind of our unit of technology commerce, if you will, a trigger bundle of data that monitors in the background for calls that are potentially emotionally or psychologically traumatic to their crews, and reaches out via text or email to somebody from their CISM team, their peer support team, their chaplain, their EAP, whatever it is, and try to get that person who's just run their second pediatric cardiac arrest of the week or decapitation or whatever it happens to be, help and support quickly. And that's a great service, and people have found good benefit from it. But as I was looking at these and thinking, that's just a little bit too little, too late. It's helpful, but it's kind of like having somebody with a potential back injury, just treating them for their back injury rather than doing anything to prevent it. So started doing some research, and my colleague Kevin, who is on the phone here with us, Kevin Hammond, who new to our team, came to us from the Ken Blanchard organization, has spent the last several decades teaching leadership courses all over the U.S. and the world. He and I started doing research into a number of things, and when you look at PTSD rates and those kinds of things in emergency services, one of the most scientifically studied PTSD inspiring events in my lifetime was the September 11th attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City. And when they first assessed folks who were responders to that situation, within the first 5 or 6 months after the attacks, between 8 and 12% of people had diagnosable PTSD. When they went back and reassessed folks 2.5 years later, that rate had gone up to around 16 or 17%. There are two theories for what may have contributed to that increase in PTSD. One is there's this dynamic called delayed onset PTSD, which is described in the psychological literature. The other is that some of the people initially may have kind of approached things with a bit of a suck it up attitude and not shared with the folks who were doing the assessment that they were having trouble sleeping or were lashing out at their kids or any of those kinds of things. But one of the questions that came up for us was, what about the 80% who didn't develop PTSD? And in many circumstances, there'll be a group of responders, a whole bunch of which will do okay, be sad a little bit afterwards, but a handful of people who end up with injury. And what we really discovered as kind of the basic substrate was this concept called resilience. And our working definition of resilience is it's the ability to advance despite adversity. So it's more than just bouncing back. And at its, one of its core roots is around stress. Now, most of you have seen this image or an image like it with a leopard chasing a gazelle. And when they teach and talk about stress, and the reality is that both of these animals are having an acute stress response at this moment. They both are having increased heart rates, increased blood pressure. They're vasoconstricted, so that the gazelle, if it gets bit, will bleed less, and the leopard will be able to have more power to its large muscles and to its heart and its brain, so it can really focus. And pupils dilate to focus, and having an acute stress response. But they describe two different types of stress response in the stress literature. The gazelle is what's having what we would describe as a threat stress response, and a threat stress response it can be life-saving in the moment. Absolutely keep you alive and help you survive dangerous things. But if it goes on too long, it can do a lot of damage, which we'll talk about here in a minute. The leopard, on the other hand, is having what's described as a challenge threat response. And a challenge threat response usually, again, is, a challenge stress response is usually fairly short-lived, but is actually nurturing to your health if you have them and appreciate them as a challenge and use them to grow from. That's where a lot of strength and ability to overcome adversity and those kinds of things comes from in life. So stress is a big part of the root of this, and being able to manage stress like a boss, if you will, is part of developing your resilience. And we know the long-term impact of stress by a bunch of different names. Sometimes we call it vicarious trauma or critical incident stress or compassion fatigue or manifest as burnout. They're kind of all the same wine in a different bottle, if you will. And if we go to the very roots of stress at the cellular level, there's some interesting things to think about that are worth knowing as we head down this resilience trail. There's a number of different manifestations of stress at the cellular level. Certainly one of the big ones is inflammation. And there are a number of different mechanisms at the cellular level that cause inflammation in your body. And that chronic inflammation can result in a whole pile of different diseases, including, MIs, strokes, cancers, a number of different things. And many of you have heard the phrase free radicals. So this has to do with oxidative stress in your cells. And when cells are attacked by free radicals, it really kind of breaks down the core function of the cell, and particularly the mitochondria, which is kind of like the battery or powerhouse of your cell. And then one of the most fascinating developments, which is actually fairly recent in science, is the identification of what's called telomeres. And telomeres, when you really understand them, they are fundamental to understanding the process of aging and disease in general. They're essentially like, those little caps at the end of your shoelaces that keep your shoelaces from becoming unraveled. Telomeres function like that for your DNA. They're the end caps of your DNA. They're not actually part of the base genomic sequence, but they keep your DNA from unraveling. And when the DNA unravels, when your telomeres are too short and not functional, it results in a number of different diseases. It's thought to be one of the root contributors to cancer, atherosclerosis, and aging. So one of the things that they measure, and a whole lot of this research has been done at UCSF, fabulous book on telomeres that really walks through all this stuff. But they talk about longer telomeres and shorter telomeres, and the shorter the telomeres are, the less effective they are at being able to do their job. So there are things in our lives that shorten our telomeres, and some things that can actually lengthen your telomeres and potentially actually lengthen your life. So things that shorten telomeres are things like chronic stress that is unmanaged, smoking, processed foods, sugar, poor sleep, a whole bunch of different things. And things that lengthen your telomeres are things that your mom told you about when you were a kid. Eat your fruits and vegetables, get deep, restful sleep. Actually, they found that taking walks in nature and green spaces can increase your telomeres, and a regular practice of mindfulness. And people who pretty actively engage in taking care of their telomeres actually look younger even as they gather years to their life. Shorter telomeres, on the other hand, are associated with a whole bunch of different diseases, certainly hypertension, which we know contributes to a lot of things, obesity, which is certainly something I have dealt with and am actively working on trying to change in my life, diabetes, heart disease, strokes and neurovascular disease, cancers, particularly prostate cancers, they've done a lot of research on, contribute to really all the autoimmune diseases, of which there are hundreds, and they contribute to all the psychological and emotional situations that we tend to get concerned about with our colleagues: depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or as some people like to prefer to refer to it as post-traumatic stress injury, which implies it can be cured, which it certainly can. You can get over it. And one of the things that they talk about related to this stuff is that we have both a lifespan and a disease span. So lifespan is that period of time where you're relatively free of chronic diseases, and then disease span, which we have all seen as folks get older in their life, when they end up with a number of chronic diseases and situations, that disease span is that last part of their life before they die. One thing that's interesting about Americans is actually our lifespan has increased over the last few decades. But the problem is our disease span has actually increased more than our lifespan has increased. So we're living longer, but we're living sicker. And improving resilience is one of the ways to help with this. So kind of our goal, and one of our goals and one of our objectives, in addition to helping with mental, emotional, and psychological health, is to help people's actual physical health extend through the building of resilience. So when you understand the value of resilience and start diving into the science behind it, you find some interesting studies. I'm just going to share a couple of them with you here. One, they had a group of prisoners who had experienced severe childhood trauma. Most of it was sexual abuse, some of it was neglect. And they had 166 of them in this one population that had made serious suicide attempts, the kind of suicide attempt that would land you in the hospital for several days just to deal with the physical consequences of your suicide attempt. So from a research perspective, they went to the same prison population and got an exact matching number of people who had serious childhood trauma but had never attempted suicide. And then they applied a number of standardized resiliency testing scores systems to them, and found that those that had never attempted suicide had significantly higher resilience scores than the suicide attempters. Another research study, there was a trauma conference, and they did interviews and evaluation and testing of all the healthcare professionals that were attending the trauma conference, and they found that 72% of these folks were at risk for compassion fatigue, which is kind of the stage just before full burnout, and they kind of commingle there a little bit. 19% of them were at risk for burnout, and 22% of them scored high in resilience, and the resilience had a negative correlation with compassion fatigue and burnout. So the people who scored high in resilience scored very low on the burnout and compassion fatigue scores, where the people who scored high on the burnout and compassion fatigue had low resilience. We found 55 studies so far, and all of them, there's a very strong association between resilience and mental health. People who are resilient are less likely to be depressed. They're less likely to suffer from anxiety, less likely to acquire a post-traumatic stress injury, and they're less likely to contemplate or act on taking their own life and killing themselves. So we've found that this is pretty inspirational for leaders to want to help their teams head down a resilience pathway, that protecting their folks from psychological, emotional, and disease-oriented situations is pretty inspiring for leaders to say, hey, we should check this out. But the minute you meet with frontline folks, they always add things to your perspective that you didn't anticipate when you're planning a problem. Just like those of you that are in leadership positions, the first time you wrote a memo and had this fantasy that now everything would be different, everything would change because everybody's going to follow what I wrote in the memo. Realize that you'll always learn new things. So one of the things we found very quickly introducing this tool and system to frontline folks is that some of them were like, whoa, dude, I'm not depressed. I'm not suicidal. This is not for me. That's for C-shift. That's not for me. And so, we realized that it was really important to include some of the science on some of the other benefits, kind of tuning into radio station, what's in this for me, for somebody who doesn't feel like they need emotional and psychological help. So one of the things that's true about people that are resilient is they're better able to deal with change, whether it's having your first child or getting promoted to captain or getting into graduate school, whatever it happens to be. Resilient people deal with change more effectively. They're more creative and particularly more creative problem solvers. And they also tend to bounce back from little situations much more effectively, whether it's dropping your smartphone in the toilet, because as I know a lot of you text when you're on the toilet, or getting cut off in traffic, or having somebody butt in front of you in the line in the grocery store. People who are resilient just recover from those little daily life stresses faster and easier than other folks. It turns out they're also braver. They're more willing to take calculated risks. This is not foolhardy bravery, but it is considering the dangers and being willing to go for something that people who have low resilience are not. And people who are resilient are much, much more effective at being able to accomplish their goals. So if they have a goal to buy a house or get into medical school or get promoted, become chief of the department, whatever it happens to be, they're just much more successful at doing it. So we've kind of augmented our definition here to say resilience is the ability to advance despite adversity and have a fun life in the process. It's once you get into it, it's pretty exciting and fun stuff. So it's kind of like taking your brain to the gym. So this system that we're bringing forth here is like exercises for all the different muscles and domains that make up resilience in your world. So generally there are 6 domains of resilience that kind of all work synergistically to help you do well in the world. So the first one and the base one is vision, and it's really the ability to set and accomplish goals. And if you want to do the quick and dirtiest assessment of how resilient somebody is, if you ask them the question, do you think you're going to be able to accomplish the goals you've set for yourself in life? And if the person says, yeah, I've got challenging goals, but here are the steps I'm going to take to do it, and I'm confident I'm going to make it happen for myself, my family, and whatnot. Those people tend to have high resilience scores on everything else. Whereas somebody who says, you know, yeah, I mean, I've got these big dreams, but they're just never going to come true. That's just unrealistic. Those people tend to have pretty low resilience scores. So the next domain is the ability to really regulate your emotions and be calm and in control. And I find that people in emergency services tend to have this as a strength for the most part, just because of the situations we face every day in the dispatch center, in the patrol car, on the pumper, in the ambulance. That and problem solving are things we generally tend to be pretty good at least at work. I'm not 100% sure that staying calm and controlled translates to folks' private lives that well, but certainly at work, it's kind of a core competency for working in our field. This next one, though, health, nutrition, sleep, and exercise is a domain that some of our folks excel at, but a whole bunch don't. The challenge, you know, with our schedules and shift work and those kinds of things, that sleep is a real challenge. And I know for me, when I started diving into this literature, this was the number one thing that I had challenge with. I've spent most of my life thinking that 4 or 5 hours of sleep was plenty. You know, that phrase, I can sleep when I get old. Well, I've gotten old, and that was not the healthiest strategy. So I'm actively working on improving that part of my life. The fifth one is tenacity, and that is the persistence to keep working toward your vision and goals, and being able to be optimistic and stay on track. And the last one is collaboration, and it's all about relationships. And the neuroscience around relationships is pretty amazing. They have found that loneliness is actually as big a risk factor as smoking is for atherosclerotic and cardiovascular disease, and that it is actually, loneliness is a bigger contributor to the development of cardiac disease than obesity and sedentary lifestyle is. And there was a study, and I apologize, this is a sexist study. It's the Harvard men's study, and it's all men, because back in the 40s when they started it, Harvard was an all-male school. But they took 750 Harvard sophomores and also 500 young men around the same age from some of the more socioeconomically challenged neighborhoods around Boston. And they went and interviewed these guys and assessed their happiness and their life plans, and they drew blood on them and did an analysis just to kind of build a profile for their happiness and health. And then they went back and did it again 2 years later. And they went back and did it again 2 years later. And they went back and did it again 2 years later, all with the same guys. So they have got more than 70 years worth of data on these guys. I think there's about 60 of them that are still left alive. And when they do the kind of meta-analysis of the tens of thousands of pages of data that they have, and they're trying to sort out what leads to health, happiness, and longevity. What are the key ingredients? It turns out it's not your hemoglobin A1C. It's not the amount of money in your bank account. It's not which degree you get from Harvard. Far and above everything else, the biggest contributor is the quality of your relationships in life. So building resilience, and certainly the system we're introducing to you here has a lot to do with enhancing your relationships in the world. So when Kevin and I were researching, we were looking for a collaborator, partner, if you will, that could work with First Watch to help our customers build resilience for their folks. So we wanted an organization that could comprehensively assess all of these domains of resilience, and then have an effective learning and development system that produced real results. And we actually, I think we found 13 or 14 of them as we were researching and looking for things, and of those, like 10 of them, didn't include nutrition and sleep and those kinds of things, so they weren't comprehensive in their system, or their development system were, hour-long videos with a talking head standing next to a PowerPoint, those kinds of things. So we really wanted something that was more effective and more engaging. So we wanted something that did learning well, and our definition of learning is it's the ability to take a different action tomorrow than you can take today. So it's not just about knowing more stuff. It's about being able to activate the new things you've learned in your world and in your life. And those of you that have been involved in training and development may be familiar with the Kirkpatrick model for evaluating the effectiveness of a training intervention, and it's a four-level assessment. So most of you have had the post-class surveys, and the instructors in the world tend to call these feel-good sheets. Did the instructor meet the objectives? Could you see the PowerPoints in the back of the room? That kind of stuff. Level 2 is really the testing and assessment for being able to kind of regurgitate the information. You learned what's involved in the Krebs cycle in the cell, and now you spit it back out on a test so you can recall it. Level 3 is were you able to turn what you learned into actual behaviors. So if you teach a community CPR class and somebody in the class is in a restaurant 4 months from now and one of the other diners go down, do they actually do CPR? So translate the learning into action, and then did that action produce a result where you're able to actually resuscitate someone. So we were really looking for a collaborator that we could work with that would be able to produce level 4 results with their training system. So after pretty extensive search, we ended up reaching out to an organization in Sydney, Australia, called Driven. And they're a group of neuroscientists and computer geeks, which are some of my favorite people overall. They have created a comprehensive, scientifically validated, peer-reviewed, published assessment tool called the PR6. It is nice because it's only 16 questions long, so people can complete it in about 3 minutes. And then it moves into this artificially intelligent, machine learning driven virtual coaching system, which is some very cool cutting edge technology. And then they use this, what they refer to as a microtask approach to learning and development, which is a crazy cool way to learn. And when I'll go into that a little bit more here in a second, but basically you just spend 3 to 5 minutes a day on your smartphone or at your computer using this virtual coach. So it is training and development that happens where you'll get introduced to a concept today, and just one concept, and then you'll get introduced to it in an exercise tomorrow, and reintroduced to it the next day in a different exercise, so that by the time the 4th or 5th day rolls around, it becomes part of who you are. So that the amount of information we've created on developing resilience right now, we've got enough that if we did it in the traditional classroom setting, we have about 16 hours worth of content. And, I don't know, I presume most of you have taken the 1, 2, 3 day long courses where a month later, if you can remember 2 or 3 things from the workshop, even though they introduced 50 things, if you can remember 2 or 3, you think, wow, that was pretty good, because a lot of them I don't remember anything. So this microtasking approach to things is fascinating, and we use a multimodal approach to delivering the content, the information. So there's a learning pyramid that is talked about in training and development circles. And this system, compared to others that are just using AV programs or standing in front of people and lecturing, this one, you will do discussion with your virtual coach. You will practice using most of the skills in the process. haven't opened up the teaching others possibility, but we're looking to figure out how to build that into the system. And then I wanted to also share with you what's referred to as the forgetting curve. So when it comes to developing skills and really training people on something, if you introduce it to them once, within a few weeks, they have about a 20% recall of it. If you reintroduce it to them fairly shortly afterwards, that recall goes up to 40%. If you do it a third, fourth, and fifth time, you can get the recall up north of 90% and just build it in. So I'll give you one personal example. My wife got into this, and usually most things we do in emergency services, you say, don't try this at home. Well, this is one you can absolutely try at home. My wife has started using the system, and our son, Axe, who is 8 years old, was eating dinner in front of the TV, which I know is bad parenting, but we do it sometimes anyhow. And he was eating rigatoni with marinara sauce. He likes a lot of marinara sauce on his rigatoni. And he'd eaten about half of the bowl, and he was bringing what was left back into the kitchen, and he tripped on one of his mini Legos in the living room. And my wife was standing right there as this kind of Jackson Pollock Rorschach of marinara sauce is getting launched. And my wife likes white things. We have white sofas, we have white tablecloths, we have white floors, we have white paint on the wall. So she's seeing this kind of spread, and I saw that look on her face, which many of you can imagine. And she got that kind of that instant hit, and then she took a quick breath, and she actually muttered under herself. She said, "What am I really feeling right now?" And which is one of the lessons you learn in the system is about, labeling and identifying emotions in the moment is a powerful way to help control your sympathetic nervous system response, and is a core part of building your resilience. She muttered, "What am I feeling right now?" And she said, "Surprise. I'm feeling surprised." She looked at our son, Axe, and said, "Axe, I'm feeling surprised. Are you feeling surprised?" And he's like, "Mom, I'm really surprised that surprised is the word that's coming out of your mouth right now." And they both went about kind of cleaning it up together. She said, "Well, let's clean it up together." And what 3 or 4 months ago would have been an angry mom and a feeling bad little kid was actually just no big deal, because it was no big deal, as one of the manifestations of having gone through the system and really being able to incorporate the skills you learn into your actual life. So the system does produce measurable results. We've got one study out so far. It's a relatively new system, so we don't have a ton of science on it so far, but the study showed that people that improved their sleep and their exercise and nutrition, along with being able to deal with their emotional issues. And so ResilientFirst is powered by Driven. So we have incorporated all of their neuroscience, all their artificially intelligent machine learning computer expertise into this framework that has been customized to work for folks in emergency services. Pretty simple framework. You start off by taking an assessment. It's called the PR6. And then you move into this virtual coach with the automated coaching to help you develop your skills. And there's always a place for instant help if you feel like you need help. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of walk you through a little bit of what the experience would be like. So when you or your family or teammates sign up, you get taken immediately to the assessment, and you get questions like, I struggle to calm myself at will. Is this not at all like me or very much like me? And we ask you to think about just the last 2 to 4 weeks of your life. Don't try to rate your entire existence, and don't try to rate your mood in the moment. It's really about, how do I generally respond to things, over the last 2 to 4 weeks? Do I stay determined through challenges? Do I feel rested and ready when I wake up in the morning? Do I eat a diet that tends to be low in processed foods and sugar? And which is one of the ones that I didn't do so well on when I took my assessment, to tell you the truth. And I've actually made significant improvements in that realm here recently, and I've actually dropped about 10 pounds in the process, even though this is not a weight loss program. It helps support that activity for me. And then when you complete your 16-question assessment, in the background, it will be building you a report that it sends right to your email. And the report contains a bunch of stuff, but the core of it is your resilience scores. So it basically scores you on a scale from 0 to 100, and it gives you a perspective of how you're doing in all 6 of the domains that make up the core of resilience. It gives you a couple of different ways to look at your data so that you can see, what are the biggest opportunities for improvement, what are your strengths, and those kinds of things. And it gives you more information so you can read if you want to study a little bit about it. And these reports are 100% confidential. So nobody in your organization will ever see the results of your scores unless you show it to them yourself. But from the organizational perspective, we do produce an aggregated report. So this is our First Watch team. There are 52 of us involved in this report, and it gives you a look at how we score overall together as a team. So one of the things you'll notice here is that within the 6 domains, health is our biggest opportunity for improvement. And so the system is focused on individual resilience building. But if you want, you can use this aggregated report to kind of inspire things to do to support each other's wellness in the organization. So one of the things that's happened around First Watch is Mark Baker, who is on the line with us here today. He's our Vice President and Director of Business Development. He has started hosting lunchtime walks where people go for a walk for a half hour at lunch. And even though there's still donuts and danishes that show up in our break room on a fairly frequent basis, you're now also as likely to see a big basket of mandarin oranges or organic Honeycrisp apples, which are my favorite. And one of our engineers has got this contraption that she brought from Hong Kong, which you put black beans and nuts and soybeans and water into this contraption, and it cooks up this really tasty, densely nutritious drink that I think 3/4 of the office is starting their morning with this concoction now. So it's a way that we can kind of support each other's health. And while these reports are being prepared in the background and delivered to you real time, it will, as soon as you're done taking the assessment, it will drop you right into this virtual coaching system. And the system knows what your score is, so it will customize your curricula, your path through the learning based on your needs for what are the biggest opportunities for improvement for you. So it is not a person. It is not perfect. It is a training and development bot virtual coach. So you just you interact with it like you were texting, and you can, if you come in here and touch with your finger and say, "Teach me the ways of resilience," it'll remind you right up front that this is not a crisis service. This is not a synonym for, nor a replacement for, nor an equivalent of EAP, CISM, therapy with a professional counselor. It's not intended to do any of that kind of stuff. Not intended to do any of that kind of stuff at all. So we really don't want people to inadvertently say, "Oh, you just ran a triple shooting with a bunch of dead folks that look like your family members. Here, use this app on your phone, you'll feel better. That's not what it's intended for at all. This is much more like going to the gym ahead of time so that you are less likely to be injured and better able to handle the stress of situations when they do come up. So at the beginning of each day in the micro tasks, it basically kind of asks you how you're doing. And you click on one of these 5 mood icons. And so if I'm not having a very good day, it'll respond and say, oh no, is there anything I can do to help? And this is an individually driven system. So if you want to continue with the course, you certainly can do that. And if you decide, you know, really I'm just kind of feeling jacked up right now and I need some help calming down, if you click on this, it'll take you to some brief guided meditations and tactical breathing exercises and those kinds of things. And if you say you need to talk to somebody now, it'll take you to a page full of resources. Now, this is the Australian version of the resources, but if any of your organizations were to sign up, we would customize the page for you with your CISM team, your EAP numbers, the resources you wanted your folks to be able to have. So we do that from a customized perspective. On the other hand, if you say, hey, I'm actually great, let's go learn, it'll say, you know, awesome, let's do some work together. So I'm going to give you a brief look at one of the videos here.
Vision involves having a sense of purpose and clear goals that you are actively working towards. In this module, we'll take a closer look at the vision domain. The module consists of 3 parts with 2 sets of questions in between. An essential component of long-term resilience, the vision domain includes other aspects that increase your capacity to achieve your goals, such as being committed and decisive, having a deep sense of self-respect and competence, and having a realistic set of options you can act on. Along with these aspects, goals are very important for motivation, especially when things get tough, because they remind you of what you're working towards and why the effort is worth it. This is also how vision increases your resilience, since it clarifies your priorities, which in turn guides your decisions when you're faced with challenges and setbacks. The effect is that you can react faster and have more confidence in your actions. This allows you to handle stressful situations better because you have clarity on what is really important and you only spend energy on things that matter. If we were to take a look inside your brain, we'd find 3 structures that play key roles with vision. The first is the prefrontal cortex, which is the main part of what we call the smart brain. This is what helps you make complex decisions and helps you think through options and figure out what is most important. The second part is the ventral striatum, which is also part of the smart brain. It helps you to assess risk and reward, and also helps you decide between the options that the prefrontal cortex generates. The third part is the hippocampus, which sits in the middle of your brain and is what allows you to store and access memories. As the smart brain assigns meaning to your goals and generates positive beliefs, we need a healthy hippocampus to store those as memories and access them when most needed. Serotonin is one of the main feel-good neurotransmitters and helps with good connection in the smart brain. An active and healthy smart brain stimulates the production of serotonin, helping you stay motivated and positive.
So one of the things that we find is that people tend to respond better to these drawing style of videos than the talking head standing next to the PowerPoint. Plus, for the people who are maybe a little bit skeptical of the system or whatnot, learning the neuroscience behind all this, and this is these guys are real scientific geeks, so they really unpack the neuroscience behind things to help you accept it as being based in science, not just somebody's weird idea of what somebody should do. Find that stuff really helpful. And the other thing, this is a little bit of a bonus for those of us in our work. When you understand the neuroscience behind how your own brain works around this, It really helps you when you're interacting with patients and the public and their own crises, whether it's from substances or psychological problems. It gives you some good strategies for being able to deal with them more effectively. And then once you're done with the video, it will ask you some questions to reinforce your learning, like what's the vision domain all about? And if you click managing stress like a boss, it'll say, no, that's more composure, but nice try. The answer is clarity of purpose and goals. And next question, what part of the brain thinks through complex decisions? Oh, I wasn't really listening to the video during that part. I'll guess it's hippocampus. That's not correct. Almost. Hippocampus is involved in short-term memory, so it's part of reinforcing your learning. So it uses a number of different modes. I'm going to jump ahead. So there's one of the sections I took was about dealing with mistakes. So it was coaching me through how to handle mistakes better. And it says, first, you have to be open to admit that you've made a mistake. Stubbornly resisting admitting to a mistake is a sure way of holding you back from learning and growing. So I clicked, yes, I admitted I made a mistake. It says, now let's get into it. What's the mistake you want to work through? So I typed in, I had an email that came up on my phone, and I just impulsively, I was pissed, and I fired off a response that was hurtful to the receiver on the other end of the email. So I overreacted to it, and I sent it in anger. So I typed that in here, and it says, great, it's important not to just admit this to yourself, but to anyone else involved. A quick way to lose respect with people is to not admit that you've made a mistake. And yes, I admitted I'd made a mistake, and I'd actually apologized. And then it says, what are some ways to minimize the damage? Can you fix it yourself quickly? You need to let somebody else know you made the mistake. Can you quickly warn somebody to keep the damage from spreading? So it continues to walk you through processes. So it will have you do exercises like this where you type back and forth. Sometimes you're watching videos. Sometimes you're talking with colleagues. It really kind of mixes up the education. And at the end of every one of your micro tasks, it asks you how you're feeling and then sets you up for the next day. And so while scores are always kept confidential, one of our colleagues who is on the line with us here today, Carlin, who many of you may have remembered from her many decades of helping transform the world of emergency services, communications, and dispatch. She was with the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch for a long time before joining our team a couple years ago. And she wanted to share her scores to help highlight how this process can be beneficial. So when she first took her PR6 assessment back in April of this year, her score was 44, and quite frankly, she wasn't very happy with a score like that. Carlin is one of those people who has historically gotten A's on most of the tests she's taken in her life, so wasn't very thrilled about that, but started working the system, and she works hers over lunch every day as part of her daily routine. I tend to do mine first thing in the morning. I wake up and tend to wish my Facebook friends happy birthday and then do my driven micro task. But Carlin, after working the system for a few months, did a reassessment and essentially doubled her resilience scores. And the folks that worked with her most closely had noticed that she was just like kicking tail and super engaged, and she'd been doing great before, but it was just like the volume got turned up on her effectiveness and connection and results and productivity and all that kind of stuff. And they asked her what was going on, not realizing that she was working the resilience first system as hard as she was, and she pointed to it as the key to improving her professional life and her personal life. Everybody frequently asks us, so what about the cost of this program? So we'll give you some ballpark numbers to play with here. So if you're going to do traditional education, and this is just, I pulled these numbers out of the air, okay? If you had 100 employees and you paid them $15 an hour, and you brought them in on overtime for $22.50 an hour for 16 hours of classroom-type education, that'd be $360 per employee, or $36,000 to train 100 people, plus the cost of the course. It doesn't include the instructor or materials at all. With the ResilientFirst microtask approach, if you had 100 employees, same pay rates, usually what we do is we use what we refer to as a resilient ambassador strategy for firing things up in an organization. So we ask you to identify the folks in your organization that are trusted by the front line. So whether it's your field training officers or your union leaders or your station officers or your shift commanders or supervisors or whoever it is in your organization. Every organization is different. Maybe it's your CISM folks, and we bring them in for a couple hours of orientation to the system and kind of do a customized conversation about how can we kick this off effectively in your organization and what kinds of things can we do to sustain it. So there's a little cost to train those folks for their bit of overtime. And then the rack rate for this program is $84 a person. We're able to offer it at $78 per employee. And so $78 for 100 plus the startup fee and the little bit of cost associated with this. It basically is about a quarter of the cost of traditional education. And we believe with this microtask approach to learning, and if you're interested in looking up the neuroscience behind it, it's referred to in the scientific literature as the spacing effect. We believe that produces much more effective results. So that gives you a little sense on the costing approach, and as always, we are ridiculously flexible with pricing strategies and payment strategies for folks. So our strategy is basically to have a resilience coach in the pocket of every person. It makes it easy for you to learn skills every day to build your resilience. If you want to chat with the system, you can chat anytime. You can track your progress and see how you're improving. You're scientifically assessing your resilience. At this point in time, we've got well over 200 skills built into the microtasks in the system, and we've got another 600 additional ones that are on the planning. So you can do this daily for a long time and learn a lot to improve your life. If you're out of sync, this will give you quick tools to get back on track fast. And our vision with this whole thing is to, in the future, have it be so that emergency services providers have lower suicide and PTSD rates than the general population. That's our big, hairy, audacious goal, if you will. So with that, I would love to take questions. Anybody have a question they want to toss in the chat room? We got one question from Greg Fries. Greg, it's great to have you here. He said that positive human connections are likely to increase resilience. If AI is being used to help users improve resilience, will it help users improve their ability and prioritize of human connections? And the answer to that is absolutely. There are several parts in the system that focus on connecting with other folks, and there are actually some of the micro tasks that say, hey, reach out to one person you know and ask them this question and bring it back. And then there was another question about attending NINA in January. I think we've got some members of our team that are planning to attend NINA. Katie says, can individuals opt into this even if the organization doesn't choose to purchase it? And the answer to that is absolutely. we will. We haven't quite got that system together yet, but Katie, if you want to take my email that's on the screen here and send me an email, and same with any of the individuals here, we'll work on getting you set up and taken care of. And let's see here. It says, will there be a recording of this webinar available? The answer is yes. It'll take a little while to just kind of edit it and translate it, but it'll be on our website shortly. Bill Clark asked, how do we test drive the app? Bill, all you need to do is send an email to either myself or Kevin here on the deal, and we can hook you up, or any of the rest of you hook you up so that you can get a look at it. And question is, has this system been tested outside of the U.S.? Actually, this system was developed outside of the U.S., so most of the testing and research was actually done in Australia. We're working on getting research fired up here in the United States. Let's see. Yep, Gabriella, we got the same question asked. I think we're in good shape there. Any other questions? Anybody want to be unmuted and have their hand raised? Or not seeing any text on my screen. And if you want to type anything else into the chat room, you're welcome to. Otherwise, it is right at 9 o'clock, right at 1 hour. We finished right on time with 1 hour. Thank you so much for attending, folks. We appreciate it. This is Mike Taigman, wishing you a happy and healthy upcoming holiday season, and that I hope this was useful to you. Thank you very much.